Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our fourth season, we are looking at Kenneth Branagh's 2011 film, Thor. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast. Again, as a reminder, Matthew is out this week, unfortunately, but fingers crossed he will be over his COVID and be back on his feet to record for next week. Today, we are talking about minute 92, which begins with the Pinzgauer arriving at the Bifrost Junction and ends with Thor pulling Jane close. Joining us again on the show today, we have James Anderson and Colin M. Parker, hosts of the Timeline Scavengers podcast. Welcome back.
Hello.
Hey, we're here again.
Before we jump into the minute, tell everybody, where did both of you find your love for Marvel and the Marvel Cinematic Universe come from? Was it comics, TV, movies? How far back did this love go for you?
There was a comic book store in Brookline, Massachusetts, where my dad lived, called New England Comics. And we would go there, and the comics were $1.
Those were the days.
And so it was really easy to know how much of my spending money, for real, how much of my spending money would buy me how much. So I bought comics. And then I discovered, I don't know if it was, I have a bunch of sequential Aquaman comics, so it may have been with that, but I discovered with either that or Fantastic Four that if you got a bunch of them in a row, they told a full story. I know I'm explaining how comics work, but
no, I understand.
It was a wild thing to discover when I was 7 or 8, and so that just set my whole world on fire. I got I watched the Batman, the Tim Burton stuff, and on through other stuff, and then I got into I've been a fan of the movies. When they make a movie about a character that I'm interested in, I'm into it. Fingers crossed for a Fantastic Four that finally works in my lifetime.
It will. Okay. John Watts is on it. You're good.
All right, cool.
You're good.
All right, I'm holding you to that. It's your fault if I don't
John
like
Watts,
it.
Please don't let me down.
And so, it just... And then when it came to actual MCU stuff, I totally fell off because Iron Man was never something that interested me. So I watched the first one at some point, and then it just, I was sort of whatever. And then my friend Mark was like, "Hey, I'm going to come up and see and watch Infinity War, I think, with you. Here are the movies you need to watch before I come up." So he gave me homework, and with the introduction of stuff like Guardians of the Galaxy, and sort of maybe you're off your beaten path of one man down on his luck but still rich gets to be a hero or whatever. How patriotic are you? That's when it got into some more sort of off the beaten path stuff, then I was like, all right, I can get into this. And then actually, funnily enough, again, when I was like, wait a minute, they're all building to something in the same way as with the comics, I was sort of like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I'm into this. So
gotcha. Okay.
I also just like to watch this kind of stuff, as much as I can.
What about you, Colin?
So when I was very young, my family is definitely very much classic Batman fans. We used to watch a lot of the Adam West Batman stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb kind of thing. And, the Batman animated series was king when I was growing up. But was also a big fan of the Ninja Turtles, which is also a big thing in our family. And then the Spider-Man cartoon, which I was kind of originally, when I was really young, I remember being Batman is the coolest. And then I saw Spider-Man and went, never mind, I have my number one, and I was set for the rest of my life.
Correct.
So I started with kind of cartoons mostly. And then I wasn't allowed to collect comic books. Part of it might have just been that I didn't really have a big allowance. So it was if you just continuously go to the store and buy 2 or 3 books each week, you're never going to be able to have any of the things that you want to have, even though maybe I just wanted the comic books.
Yeah, exactly.
But when I became an adult and had my first real full-time job, I did immediately go, now I can, spend money on this hobby. So I have many long boxes in my closet here at my parents' house of Aquaman comic books, of Batman, of Flash, but of course, mostly of Marvel stuff. But I will say, like, my comic book reading times came from anytime my parents would be like, we're going to go to Barnes and Noble or Borders and we're going to just read for a bit. I'd be like, sure, I'll read. And I would like go towards the kids, like not kids, but like young adult section, and then sort of beeline a little across and just go to like the section that just had all the hardback trades of comic books. And I would just read X-Men, Spider-Man, whatever they had that was like available at the time. And I would just read through them like wildfire as much as I could. Although half of them didn't make sense because, you know, sometimes you would have a thing where this is this part of Spider-Man, but it's after this storyline that they didn't have on the shelf. So there's a lot of those, see this thing for clarification. I'd be like, yeah, right, oh, that's weird. He went from having a red suit to a black suit. Yeah. Oh, well, you know, just like no explanation. It's just like he's in it, you know, things like that. So you're kind of all over the place. But yeah, I don't know. It just really captured me. And then finally for the MCU, I feel like I got lucky in terms of finding it like immediately. This will show my age a little bit, but my junior year of high school's after prom was held at the AMC near us, which is cool because they had stuff in the lobby, but then they had like 3 or 4 of the theaters that were just playing whatever movie was playing on a loop. And there was obviously chaperones and stuff like that in there as well, because they're not going to let kids get godless, you know, in an AMC. But I remember being there and seeing Iron Man and going, hey, this is the only one that's not a rom-com. Can we start with this one? I was like, and then I'll watch all the other 3, but let me just get one thing in. And my partner at the time was like, okay, yeah, sure. And so we went in, saw Iron Man, and immediately I was like, this rules. This might be the best superhero movie I've ever seen. And she was asleep within 5 minutes. So I got to watch it a second time because she was just passed out. And I was like, great, I'm going to watch it again. Robert Downey, what's his name? Robert Downey Jr.? Okay, cool. Yeah. I don't know who this guy is, but he rules. That was my whole MCU thing.
Sometimes Colin is just so young.
Painfully younger than you? Yeah.
Who is Robert Downey Jr.? I did forget that there was a time right as college was ending, in like 04, 05, when I was like, oh, comic books are affordable, and subscribing to them isn't prohibitively expensive like it was in middle school, because sometimes I just sort of zone out. And so I was like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get into the Avengers because I wanted a team dynamic. Mm-hmm. And it turned out that I was getting into the Avengers right as like Disassembled and House of M was starting. So like I got
so good though.
Yeah. And it was like, hey, you're getting back into comics? Here's a checklist of comics that are going to be coming out for the next 7 months. And I was like, I like a checklist. Let's fill this baby out. And so I own all of the House of M's.
That's
all
very
of the houses
James-like,
yeah. So there was a time where I was just seeing the movies and sort of looking. I have comic books from when I was little, but like wasn't actively doing anything with them until And my friend Mark was with me when we would go to our comic book store in Harrisonburg, Virginia, to start that up.
Yeah, you definitely hit that point in your life where you go from just like, that casual comic book reader, like, I like Spider-Man. Oh, he's fighting the lizard in this episode. Cool. To a point where you go, oh, there's this whole multiple episode or multiple issue story arc. I need to kind of follow this. And you kind of grow in that love and understanding of how comics work and everything. And I think that's cool, the way that it kind of informed really both of you and how it led to your love of the films and your own podcast. So, and
I will say, like, I'm a big proponent of having like the physical copies and having the trade issues and stuff like that. Like, I love that. Love having the protective cover and the God, what's that
bag and board?
Is it just called bag and boarding? My comics. I love that. Don't get me wrong.
However,
but Marvel Unlimited, the app in which you can just pay for like a year and like every book that they put out is digitally just like readily available, is a godsend, especially as someone who is currently like perilously close to penniless. Like, I get the Peter Parker story because I live that lifestyle very well. And so being able to read like hundreds upon hundreds of comic books without having to spend an insane amount of money is like an incredible thing. I get it. I love having the paper versions, but like if you're frequently like, I would love to read more about like these characters that I see in the movies. I want to know more about like their histories in comics. An incredible purchase.
It's curated so well too. Like they do a really good job of like, we think that you'll probably want to know more about the Eternals. So here's a whole thing about the Eternals.
Yeah, this character, right? Yeah, and it's a great way, like in those notes that you have at the bottom, like see this issue to understand this story. Then you can just go, oh, okay, I'll look at that issue, and now I understand.
That is how I've been reading comics for the past 9 months. Is I started in one, and I've just been every time they say go see this, I'm like
thread.
On it.
Off I go.
Been a wild way to read comics, and
yeah, a lot of jumping around. Well, let's jump into this minute right now. We're talking about minute 92 of Thor, and it starts off with the Pinzgauer arriving finally at the Bifrost Junction here, as we like to call it. The Pinzgauer apparently fits. Let's see, we've got Erik, we've got Darcy, we've got Hogun the Grim, Fandral, Sif, and Volstagg all riding, and it looks like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to tell. It's a little far away. Volstagg's definitely on top. I couldn't tell. Is anyone else on top, or is it just kind of like armor and stuff behind Volstagg?
I think it's just him.
Yeah.
Like, the thing is, it's not a huge vehicle, but it is big enough to carry all of their equipment and stuff like that. And remember, a lot of it has been borrowed and stuff like that. So I have a feeling that you could fit the first 5 out of 6 in that vehicle and have no issues. And I can't tell if it's like that thing of, we don't have room for a 6th person, and everyone just sort of looks at Volstagg like, hey, buddy. Or if he's like, I would like to ride upon the top. Like, I don't know. He seems more like about like the delicacies of the worlds, but it also feels like he would find that fun because he's a little free spirited.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, I feel like Volstagg, like, I almost want to see him, like, surfing on the top of it, like, riding in.
Teen Wolf style.
Exactly.
First of all, so they flew off, and then they went and landed and got in a car? Is that what we're talking about?
No. Only Thor and Jane flew off. Everyone else had to drive there.
Okay, so they met them there. Got it.
You're right.
Okay, that makes me feel so much better.
Yeah. Yeah, and so this spot is just a little bit outside of town.
Okay.
The hammer lands as we had the townies tell us 50 miles west of town. This is a lot closer to town. I don't know. It's supposedly only about 12 miles away. I don't know why it's they have all their math wrong the way that they've described it in the film. But anyway, when the destroyer lands, like you can see it just from town. You can see the spot where it's landing. So I think it's probably only about a 5-minute drive or so. It's not going to take that long for them to hop in the car, get down there, and everything. That being said, Thor flies off very quickly, and he's probably there much earlier.
30
Is
seconds.
he standing here calling for Heimdall the entire time that he's waiting for them to catch up with him? I mean, has he just been out here?
I think he waits for them to get there because, as we'll see later, you can't just like leave the bridge open safely.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he's like, oh, we probably should have given them a head start,
Right.
Or like saying, like, we've got time. Do you want to get a coffee before we head over? I would love, kind of like you were saying earlier, you wanted another minute of Loki. I would love to see another minute of them, making the travel arrangements of, well, I mean, we don't have horses, so how do we? God, all right,
This thing's got
also
24. Yeah. I don't know how horsepower works, but it'd be a fun joke.
Yeah, they'd be like, I don't understand how do you have horses in there? They're like, we don't.
In that?
But you just, you mortals are weird, But like, I really want to know some of the background stuff, especially because he goes, I have to debrief you. But then does he turn to them and go, well, I guess I'll debrief you instead?
Exactly.
There's no accounting for time or how they get there. It's just like, he's there chilling with Jane. Like, that was a cool ride, right? Oh, shoot.
Well, maybe it's like Superman. It's like, the "Can you read my mind" flight. Like maybe they flew to Hawaii and back. I mean,
yeah.
Who knows?
They totally could.
I love that. I love that very much. Again, this is the second that, just like Colin was saying, all you need is an establishing shot where Jane and Thor are standing there. All you need is that same shot with a blurry blonde head and a blurry, shorter brunette head. And then we answer all the questions that I have in seeing that shot.
Where, like, have them facing each other, like, still blurry, and then just turn to look at the car approaching.
Also, say goodbye then when no one's watching you. I'm just saying.
Well, because they know there's still going to be time.
Right, but all right. They urgently call Heimdall, ring the doorbell over and over and over and over and over again until Heimdall answers. And then Thor's like, great, it's open. Now I'm going to go say goodbye. It's like, my friend, there was so much time. Like...
Well, but it's one of those things, because then it's that awkward goodbye. Like, well, we already said goodbye, but goodbye again.
And now we're heading the same direction. Oh shoot!
That's right.
Yeah.
Jane also gets on the Bifrost. She's like, "You're going." Oh no! Oh jeez!
Oh gosh, that's embarrassing.
The other thing that I wanted to say here is there are all the wreckage of the shield vehicles here, and I'm glad that Agent Coulson had one that he could drive away with, and it made me wonder. It's like, where are all the other agents? Yeah, like, are they walking? Like, are they? They're at the rooftops. Yeah. They're all hoofing it back to the crater base. Maybe they're all just like, all right, well, it's over that hill 12 miles.
A lot of them probably. Those are the ones that definitely did not make it. I hate to be. I mean, if you saw those cars, most of those guys are not there anymore.
Would love a scene of the Warriors 3 and Sif passing a big group of agents, just like hot in their suits. Just like, ugh.
Just walking.
How far?
Yeah. Like,
it's almost there. Okay, good. Like, just like a...
We're almost there, right.
This 5-minute drive seems a lot like 12 miles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I know we've kind of already started to talk about it a little bit. The moment where he starts calling for Heimdall is, to me, one of the funniest things of this entire movie, because specifically, two things about it. The first one being that it reminds me a lot of when you're a kid and you need your parents' attention, but they're busy, they're doing something. So instead of like waiting for them to just finally come and find you, you just keep going like, Mom, right? Like, so just the way he's like, Heimdall. But the second thing is the fact that he is millions upon millions of miles away, right? Or however you want to describe this distance in space. And so what he does it, like after the third one, I think it is, maybe it's the fourth one, he yells it a little louder as if that is going to be what Heimdall's like, oh, sorry, I dozed off a little bit.
I was frozen.
But that was the perfect volume. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Like, it is so funny that he's like, that's weird, he doesn't answer. Let me try it 10% louder. Yeah, it's
like when you talk to somebody who speaks a foreign language and you raise your voice and talk slower, as if that helps them understand what you're saying.
Donde está Bifrost Heimdall.
I like to link this with the narrative of Come See My Room. It's like they went from high school to his house, and then he's at the door and he doesn't have his key. And he's like, Heimdall.
Right.
Heimdall, my room's really cool. Hold on one second.
Yeah.
Do you have a phone? Can I?
He's like, you're embarrassing me right now.
I had that note. I'm like, is Jane, like, is there a small part of her that thinks maybe he actually is crazy? I mean, I know he can fly and he destroyed that thing that was in the sky, but now he's just standing out in the middle of the desert calling somebody's name. Like, there's something very strange about that.
I also think that I know that this is a logistical thing that I keep bringing up, but couldn't they have said their goodbyes while one of the other 4 people that are just watching them call Heimdall? Like, hey, Volstagg, call Heimdall. I'm going to go over here and say goodbye to my lady love, because that's what you do when you talk to your bros about your lady love.
The thing is, though, it's a lot of what I think suffers for Thor characters, right? Which is that, like, most of Thor stuff is nothing but Thor, right? And I know that sounds like a wild thing to say, But I have felt like in every time we see any of his Asgardian friends, I'm like, I could use 800 more minutes of them.
Right.
And it's a bummer that there are many that we won't see. You know, it's like, I don't care if it's a flashback at this point. Give me a Disney Plus series that's just like stuff that they do when he's off world.
And I'm going to say, there is source material out the wazoo for that.
There is.
At some point in the 60s, they agreed with you. And the funny thing is that I just realized that Hogun, Fandral, and Volstagg are Thor split into 3 people. Because you have like grimdark, like, oh, this is, I must, whatever. And then you have sort of, I'll have at thee. And then you have,
can other people see his friends?
I love that. Thor Club.
Are they just Thor's imaginary friends from when he was only 5 years old in God years?
Tyler Thornton.
And now he's grown
Thor's
up.
beautiful mind.
Yeah, and everyone's like, Thor, you got to stop leaving places at the table for Volstagg. He doesn't exist. And he's like, no, he wants more. Oh, yeah, good job, Volstagg. Yeah, very good.
This just got dark and sad.
But
maybe he is crazy.
Picture this. Thor puts Volstagg in charge of calling Heimdall. He goes over and says goodbye to Jane. They have a lovely, sweet moment. And every now and again, the camera pulls out to a shot that has Thor, blurry Volstagg calling up to Heimdall, Jane. They come back in.
It's not as funny.
No. They come back in.
Why don't they all call in unison? That would make it better, right?
Thor comes over, and we see all the Heimdall breaking out stuff. And Thor comes over and calls once. And the Bifrost comes.
Okay, that would be funny. I'll give you that.
And Volstagg's like,
that would be.
What? Why did you... Come on,
that would
man.
Be good. That would be good.
That would be good.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, I'm not giving Kenneth Branagh notes, but like, I'm just saying like that.
Many years later,
all these years later, he's like, you know what? I want to do my director's cut. I want to go back and actually, Zack Snyder got to reshoot stuff. Can I reshoot stuff?
I listened to a minute 92
black and white 4-hour version. Yeah. Right. So we're talking about Heimdall, all this stuff. Heimdall, I mean, he is really pissed. He is so mad that he screams his way out of the ice here. Well, not quite, but he's screaming. He's screaming. He's going to be out of the ice here in a second. Before that, we got to talk a little bit about Hogun and everyone else, because I mean, we're talking about the Warriors 3. Hogun, the perfect response from Hogun. We are stranded. I mean, it's just that is exactly what we get out of Hogun. His lines like that. Exactly. It's interesting in the script. Volstagg is the one who says it, so I'm actually glad that they changed that to Hogun. It makes a lot more sense
for sure.
To do it that way. But I have a question about this, because Heimdall, I mean, we know he has incredible vision. They've talked about it, but it also is, they're really making it seem like he can hear really far too. Are we meant to believe like anytime somebody's calling him that he actually is hearing it? Is there some magical spell inside the observatory where he can just hear when he's there?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I think it's
yes.
like a I don't know how many of these there are in the world, but like in the dome of the Capitol, they have like that whisper room where it like bounces off and you can whisper on one end of the thing and hear it on the other end.
Yeah, like with the parabolic ceilings, right?
Yeah. That, but universe big. If you're in the room, and that's why his name's Heimdall and not like Joe, because it's like you want a name that's like unique so that you only hear the one name and not just like every time like a.
Not all those Joes, right?
Hey, Joe, what? Oh,
so I shouldn't have named my son Heimdall. I guess
think.
What you're saying.
I mean, I think we all. But if we all name our son Heimdall, then it's that problem. Heimdall's the new Joe.
So the other thing is that's also part of his actual like abilities, and it's not. I don't believe it's from the like his role as the like guardian essentially of the Bifrost. Like canonically in comics, because I remember looking it up at one point for something else, because we haven't really gotten into it yet. But Heimdall has superhumanly acute senses.
Senses. It's not just see. Okay.
His post for the Century of Asgard is due in large part to his extraordinarily acute senses. His sight, hearing, and smell are enhanced to the point that they qualify as extrasensory. He can see and hear as far as creation. And he can look across time and space. to detect the approach of most beings within hundreds of miles. So, he definitely, I think it's like a little bit of, I don't know how you would want to word this necessarily, but I believe that he essentially hears and sees everything like at all times. But it's a lot like, how spiders have like 8 million eyeballs to focus on one thing. I think that he can kind of see it all like it's a bunch of screens, but then if he needs to, he hears like his name, like in particular, and zoop, he can focus in on just one. Yeah, exactly. Enhance, like, okay, sword into the. Yeah, and they come up.
Interesting. Yeah. Well,
there's my Foley for you.
It sounded real. It sounded like I was watching the movie again.
Where's the Bifrost? Oh my god! Oh, it's Colin. Okay.
It's I don't know. I find it interesting. I certainly understand why Idris Elba was not thrilled with kind of playing this character until at least the third movie, because he really doesn't get to do much. He stands there. He's wearing very big armor, and there's not a lot for him to kind of physically do or emote or anything. But I love that the concept of the character and the idea of having these senses. I think in the what I have read, it says he can only see within the 9 realms, not necessarily all the way back to creation. But I still think it's a very interesting sense of of this character. I enjoy him quite a bit.
Etymologically, the fact that Heim is in his name, and they're all Jotunheim, Nortenheim, all the
Niflheim.
Sort of makes me, this isn't how it is. Niflheim, right. This is not how languages work. But I'm like Heim, realm, all. So he sees all of the realms. Got it. It's in his name. And so that's not it, but that is how that means. So it makes sense to me because of that fake linguistics thing I just did. That he can only see.
Sounds like real linguistics. That was impressive.
Hey, linguists,
yeah,
hit me up. Am I one of you?
That's right. Call James.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I am looking at like the MCU's specific wording for Heimdall's abilities. And you're right. They do label it slightly differently. In the comics, they say it's across like as far as creation. But here it definitely says his sight itself extended to all of the 9 realms, and his hearing was so sharp and precise that he can hear the Warriors 3 conspiring against Loki from his post.
But it's like that thing where, before we knew about space, we're like, all of creation, by which we mean the continent we are currently on and nowhere else. It's like, I can see all the way back to creation because the 9 realms and that's it. But that's not the sort of universal situation we're in the MCU.
And I was going to say, I'm sure, there's definitely places that aren't the 9 realms that they've like, Sakaar and stuff like that. Like, I'm sure he could probably still see them there, right?
Well, that was kind of we've talked about that quite a bit, trying to get a sense of really what the scope is and what is just the 9 realms. And it's one of these things where they've really kind of had to fit the particular Norse stories that they pulled all this from into this. And we've got the 9 realms that makes up Asgard, or makes up kind of the Yggdrasil. But there is a bunch of stuff beyond that. And so they can travel with the Bifrost to anywhere within the 9 realms. But if they go outside the 9 realms, then they have to travel with the spaceship or some other sort of thing.
Right.
So, yeah. So, it's like there is other methods of transport. It's just like, they are this one little continent and they have to, find a different way to get elsewhere.
Yeah.
So. And now that I talk about all this with Heimdall and his hearing, I had forgotten that there was a moment in the script way early on that wasn't part of the film where they talk about how he can hear a cricket fart in Niflheim. So yeah, of course he can. He's got great hearing.
Niflheim famous for its famous farting cricket.
That'd be a great line.
Yes, right. I think it's on one of the advertising posters that they have up in the Bifrost Junction.
Yeah, it's like best superhero movie of 2011 or whatever, like, New York Post, and then I can hear a cricket fart, and Niflheim.
Exactly.
It's not Heimdall that can do that. That's just Idris Elba.
Just Idris. That's on his resume.
That's how powerful Idris Elba is. Yeah.
Somewhere Idris Elba's like, what?
That's how he got the job. He was like, hey, you want to see a great talent of mine? Hang on.
He's listening right now.
Yep. 2 blocks away from your house in particular. And they're like, wow, that's incredible.
Say something really quiet.
That is amazing.
I'll be over here.
Like a game of telephone.
So we have this moment. Heimdall finally does break out of the ice here. He screams his way out. He explodes. It looks kind of like an exploding snowman. And then he goes right into action. He beheads a frost giant, stabs the other in the gut, and like flips him over. I'm guessing maybe off the edge of the bridge. I'm not exactly sure. My question was, I mean, he had been frozen for quite some time. Would he be able to be quite so mobile right away? And did he know there were 2 frost giants standing behind him?
Also, wasn't he loudly cracking?
Couldn't they hear? Right, exactly.
I feel like when he bursts out, you look at both of the frost giants and they're like, what?
You have to remember, though, that like movie sounds, right, are not the same as like real universe, right? I mean, then again, I don't know. The other thing is like he surely knows that they're there, because if he can see all of time and space and can't see 2 feet behind him, that's embarrassing. You know what I mean? Like that's
he's farsighted.
There's a problem with his. Okay, James, that was a good one. I'm gonna give you that one.
He needs his cheaters on.
Yeah, he's like, let me get on my Warby Parkers. Hi, everybody. Heimdall here to let you know that Asgard is brought to you by Warby Parker. Use promo code SEEALL to get 10% off.
See all. See all the time, Heimdall.
I think for sure he knows that they're there. And I don't know if it's the... Okay, so you were talking about how he like screams his way out.
I scream my way
My
out.
question is it just that he's screaming because he's exerting a lot of energy and it's the body that is put, or like, is it like that he's just essentially like, trying to melt the ice, but because he's also Asgardian and has all these extra abilities, maybe his super sensory abilities are like, I don't know.
I think it's because if someone's flexing with encased in ice and they're not making any noise, then it's nothing, crack, burst.
Right.
And you're like,
so again, it's like movie magic.
Happen?
You have to explain it. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm being a little cheeky. I mean, sure, he's definitely flexing and trying to like break out, but I do like the idea. They make it feel like he's just screaming really loud. I don't know where he's getting the air, but he's screaming the ice.
It only
off.
just occurred to me that he was flexing. Like a minute before I said the sentence, I've thought all the rest of the time that he is literally like, Rah! And there's like, I mean, he's just a very powerful voice.
I mean, Idris Elba's got muscle aplenty to flex within ice. If
anybody could do it, it's Idris.
Absolutely.
Right?
You know what? That's not even CGI. That's Idris Elba actually encased in ice, and he broke it like.
It'll be fine.
He was
bro.
like, "You need another take," and they're like, "I don't think so. That was incredible." And he's like,
"That was just amazing. Ice, isn't it?"
That's right.
Oh, wait a minute.
He's like, "No, I want to do it because it's just fun." I just do this every day.
Yeah.
So Heimdall, he crawls, he kills these 2 frost giants. It's very quick, but it works well. I enjoy it. Wow. And then he goes into the observatory to get things started. He takes Hofund, his sword, and he puts it into the keyhole and lights up the Yggdrasil lightning inside there, getting things started. There's a note that I had that you can actually, if you look on the floor from where he is down out the door, you can actually see icy footprints, which I thought was actually kind of nice. Like, he was so cold, he's tracking ice in along the way.
I didn't see that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice little CG ad that they put in there.
Mm-hmm.
But then he starts things up and collapses, and now we're back on Midgard, and we see the swirling tornado-like clouds. Sif smiles in relief. I just find it so funny because, well, one, the Bifrost works so differently in this film than it does later. Like, we never see such a drastic, descent of the Bifrost to any other planet. Even on Jotunheim in this film,
it's never as cloudy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But it's just funny because even for the Midgardians here, it's like if you see a swirling tornado-like cloud over your head, your normal reaction would be to run. Yeah, I would think.
Get indoors, get into a basement.
Yeah. Hop in that vehicle and drive as fast as you can away from it. But here they are.
Yeah. Now, because she's a long way away from Kansas.
So Sif smiles. We have this moment where Hogun and Volstagg are behind her. And it's interesting. It's a shot where the direction clearly was, you're looking up and now look down. and you can see their two heads like drop as they're like, I don't know, assuming they're watching the Bifrost descend. But it's one of those funny little moments. Like when you watch it minute at a time, you start noticing these things. It's like, I'm never going to see them not dropping their heads like that now. Okay, so I gotta ask you two, did you notice, and this is now one of my all-time favorite things in the film, when the Bifrost comes down and they all start moving toward it, we cut to a wide shot and we see Fandral as if he is just finished kissing Darcy's hand as he's walking into the Bifrost.
Yes.
Did either of you catch that?
I forgot I did, and I didn't write any notes about it, but as you said it, I was like, first of all, Darcy isn't in these scenes. She's in the background in this part.
She's in the background, yeah.
But yeah.
Well, she was clearly in the vehicle too, getting there, so.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think it's like interesting because of that clearly was not a direction. I think that was, we're on our 12th take. Let's just do something crazy, right? It's very high school theater. We're background characters. We can kind of do whatever we want as long as we don't get too overboard. And they're like, hey, crazy thing. What if this time, like, I dip you? They're like, too much action in the back. Stop that. And they're like, I'm just going to kiss your hand. And she's like, okay, yeah, cool. And then maybe they hoped it would be something.
Well, I'll tell you, in the script, there actually was something where when they say we're trapped here, Fandral actually says, then I suppose we better start settling into our new lives. He looks at Darcy, turns on the charm. Fandral, are all Earth maidens as fair as you? Darcy enjoys the attention. No. And then as the Bifrost drops down, Fandral turns to her and says, sorry, my love,
no.
These things happen. No, well, he says, are all Earth maidens as fair as you? And she says, no.
I love it. That's
great.
Yeah.
That's very Darcy.
I want that in the film. I love that moment so much.
Yeah.
We need the extended cut. We need the director's cut right now, KB.
Yeah.
Get on that.
Yeah.
These are the things that get cut when they're trying to speed up that third act because they don't want the audience to be kind of like checking their watches. And those things get cut. And it's a shame because like the minute I saw that thing with Fandral, I'm like, oh, that would have been so great. Like, of course Fandral's going to, like, they're in a 5-minute car ride. Of course he's going to be hitting on the only other girl in here. That's great. And now we have this moment. And
it's also funny that you mentioned that they're like cutting for time and like trying to make sure people aren't like checking their watches because the last like 4 movies basically have been like long movies, which I am a fan of.
Sure.
Like like there's a lot of people that are like, go back to the 90-minute movie thing. And I'm like, no, boo, don't do that. At least not with these things. Like this is again kind of like you need multiple comic books to get through it. This is like you're watching 6 issues on the big screen. If you made, for example, I know this is way ahead of you and us, but like if you made Spider-Man No Way Home 20 minutes shorter than it was, I would have rioted. There would have not been enough time for anything. I needed that movie and I needed like 20 more minutes, honestly. It was delightful. But like Thor could have easily used even 5 minutes. 5 minutes of that scene. 1 minute of Loki plotting and inner thoughts in the text bubble. You know, like that's all you needed. Just a little bit more. People who are kind of like, can I hold it in? Yes, you can. You know, in the theaters. And if you're at home watching on Disney Plus, you can pause it at any time. This is not a sponsored ad. I realize that came off very much as if I was about to give a promo code for like a trial period. No, but you know, it's
Marvel,
just like
Disney, hit us up
that,
though. I mean, like,
please.
We're not
we're ready for you.
Yeah. But yeah, for sure. I will give that promo code every 5 minutes if I have to. You know, no, but like, I think it's interesting that they cut stuff like that, but I loved the fact that that is there considering I really was expecting that to just be them like goofing off. So I guess that was just like the end of that scene. And then later on, he's sitting in the theater going, God, man, I had like 10 lines and they cut 3 of them. Come on, man.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to say about the Warriors 3 and Sif and kind of how they were written, how that ended up translating into Kenneth Branagh and his editor's decisions to kind of cut a lot of it. And really kind of then I think from there, moving forward with the other 2 films, why they were essentially kind of essentially written out and eventually killed. You know, it's kind of the sad fate of these characters, because I think they could have done some really interesting things with them. But I mean, if you had read the script the way they scripted it, I mean, it was, I don't know, my understanding is there's a lot of stuff that comes from the comics, kind of their interactions and stuff, which is very much for like the grade school audience, and it didn't work that well. Like when Volstagg is knocking Jotuns over with his big belly and things like that. It's like,
okay, now hold on, though.
But that's very good.
I know he does that. I know he does that. It doesn't mean it's going to work in the movie.
All right, here's how you cut time and leave more room for fun Warriors 3 stuff. Don't ever... Now, okay, Tom Hiddleston's going to disagree with me, and probably all of the rest of the audiences too. Don't ever show Loki plotting. Show the effects of his plotting, show the destroyer coming down, show the ice frost giants invading, and then at the end you see that he was behind all of it, and you do a quick montage flashback of him plotting all that stuff. And then you don't have to keep going to him being like, brother, we'll just see about that, or whatever Power Ranger villain stuff he says in this movie. Can I talk about Volstagg now, or is this...
Well, yeah, I think this is a good time, because we're not going to have much more Volstagg the rest of the week, so I know you had some thoughts.
I fell in love with Volstagg. I was reading these 60s... So I'm reading comic books in two ways right now. One is following the references, and two, I found this... the Marvel Wikia has a reading order that starts like us at the beginning of time, and then goes through... present day with like this comic takes place then, and then this, and then this, and then this. And so I was reading these tales from Asgard that are in the back of these Journey into Mysteries and Thor comic books. And they write, so Volstagg could just be a fat joke for all of the run. And he's not that. And that feels gross when you read it. But there's such a richness to like... He's both the most boastful and the bravest and also the most cowardly. And I loved it because he's like, I think I will be the first one to jump across this. I will be brave enough to stay behind while you all jump across this cliff. And he's just, it's just, when you said they could have done so, like I would watch a Warriors 3 TV show all day long. Listen, the way they drew Kingpin in Into the Spider-Verse is how they draw Volstagg in the comics. Like it's just a big triangle of a man,
slab of man,
it's a giant,
like a steak. Volstagg,
which I'm sure he loves. Yeah,
I love it. But like, so the fact that he's just sort of husky in this, I'm like, all right, that's fair. But like. You could have done a whole thing with the Warriors 3. Even Sif, notwithstanding, you could have done a whole thing with them. And I understand why they didn't. And I understand if you're Kenneth Branagh, you're reading it and it's like, yeah, I mean, but are we really going to, or are we not going to? But I reading it every time I read it, and I was like, that is delightful. And I'd send Colin like little screenshots of him saying stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, missed opportunity, but understandable because you can't cram it all in, and that's the real tragedy is that it's why we have to stop doing Spider-Man's origin story once we try and take a third bite of the apple.
Third bite of the man.
Yeah, because you have so much to get in that you can't keep going back to issue number 1, and
take notes, DC.
But it's interesting, though, because, I mean, the Thor films, think about the characters that the Thor films have created for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, Erik and Darcy, they have had a long life in this franchise. Agent Sitwell, and then, I mean, Hawkeye appears in this film. This is where Hawkeye...
Agent Sitwell was not invented for Thor,
but I mean, well, as the character though, like because Hawkeye too, it's like they're put into this film
the MCU.
As characters here in this film, and then they are given such kind of rich life beyond, and it is kind of. I mean, I do think that it is a little bit of a shame that the Warriors 3 just never had that chance as characters that are so close to Thor. They should have found a way to do more with them and give us a little more.
Because then Sif shows up on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and that's awesome.
Yes. That was going to be another thing I was going to mention is like, I love that, like, part of this I also think comes from, apparently, I don't know if I've ever found any actual evidence of this, but I remember someone saying that Jamie Alexander just like really loves playing Sif. And so basically has always been like, if you need me, just let me know. And I think that's the reason why we've seen Sif and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and also have seen her in Loki. I think that like she came back for Loki like just because she was like, hey, look, I will do this thing.
What a great scene. I just remember.
I know. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. So much fun.
I do want to continue with this Sif and Warriors 3 thing, but I also wanted to address something that you were talking about, introducing characters into the MCU, because I'll probably never remember to tell this story ever again because we'll be so far in the future by the time we get there. But when Hawkeye was premiering on Disney Plus, right before this last final episode, they put out like on the internet, like, here's the checklist of all the things you need to watch before you watch the final episode. And I sent it to James and I was like, James, why the heck, like, why is Thor on this list? Like, it was baffling to me. And we went back and forth for minutes. And finally I went, James, this is embarrassing. This is the movie that they first introduced him. I could not for the life of me place. I was like, are they going to introduce, something from Asgard?
Yeah.
I was like, that would be a wild turn. I was like, does Agent Coulson somehow come back? It was, we went for minutes and finally was like, that's so embarrassing. Hawkeye's first appearance in the MCU is in that movie.
This is where it was. This is where it was. That's right.
So yeah, I'm putting out my shameful, again, I've seen all these movies so many times, but it also shows which movies I maybe have watched fewer times, like Thor and Thor: A Dark World, and pretty much just those. Oops.
Here's my pitch. Luke Cage season 3. Luke Cage teams up with the Warriors 3.
Okay.
There would be so much. What are these?
Something we have pitched is doing the Asgard High School, where you have the Warriors 3, Sif, Thor, Loki, all in high school. It would be a perfect type of show for Disney Plus,
Absolutely.
Right? Just all of these people when they're just like all their high school drama. So
I'm in. Okay, let's do it.
Well, this is all right. Let's get it started. Disney Plus, hit us up. So, let's wrap this up. So Thor pulls Jane in. I must go back to Asgard. That's where our minute ends. We're going to have a lot of this to talk about tomorrow. So let's put all that off for tomorrow. So Colin and James, would tell everybody again, where they can find your podcast and hear more of you and all the Marvel stuff that you're talking about.
We have, our podcast is called Timeline Scavengers, and that has a Twitter, which is at Timeline Scav. We are part of the Scavengers Network, which is on Twitter at ScavengersNet. And I say that because that's the network that has all the rest of the shows that we're on. You can go to scavengersnetwork.com and find sort of just a guide to all the other things that we do.
So you can find the one other show that I do and the 17 other shows that James does. That's mostly a joke. James does 5 other shows?
I don't. Yeah, maybe.
I believe that's correct.
Maybe
it's a
keeping busy,
but it's great. James is busy, but he churns out the hits.
I like starting podcasts, but you can follow, if you follow us on Twitter at those 2 places. We're gonna basically link to. We're starting to do this thing. Basically, when we have pickup episodes, when we have episodes that appear earlier in the timeline than we are. Like Eternals, we put them in where they go. So Eternals, like it's going to be like the 3rd episode, and it's going to be like 4 or 5 episodes, I think, is going to be Eternals now. And so what we're starting to do is at the end of each week, we're saying like, this week we released this, this, and this. So if there's something that takes place back in 5000 BCE, you can go back and check that out if you didn't see it in the timeline.
Right, because it'll be listed as being out in June of 2020 as opposed to, not 2020, I'm sorry, 2021.
Yeah.
As opposed to in 2022 when we actually recorded it.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So that's but Timeline Scav is the best place to follow us for all that. Also, I have a recurring joke where I say, Dormammu, I've come to bargain just about every time I think of it.
Mm-hmm. And then
you got it in
the
here.
most recent one. Yeah.
I did tweet during when Colin was talking about our social media for the last minute. I did go on and send one out in situ. So,
oh, good,
nice, I love it. Well, everybody, check that out. Follow that podcast. Tune into it, and all of you wonderful listeners, thank you so much for all of your support. As Matthew always says, have a good day, and as I always say, until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is One Last Ride by Martin Puringer. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, consider doing that for this show.